The most merciful thing in the world is the inability of the human mind to comprehend everything it knows. A world in which a person is superfluous. A childhood in which fear appeared before meaning. The story of the man we know as Howard Phillips Lovecraft. Almost no one dances sober unless they are insane. Howard Phillips Lovecraft was born into a world that almost immediately showed him its fragility. He didn't have to be disappointed in life. He never had time to believe in it. When Howard was just 3 years old, his father suddenly stopped being a father. He didn't die, which would be easier to explain. He disappeared in madness. Scott Lovecraft's Winfield had an acute psychotic episode. Medical records of the time included a diagnosis of general paresis, which in 19th century medicine was synonymous with late-stage syphilis, which affected the nervous system and brain. Howard Lovecraft himself most likely did not know the true cause of his father's illness. The family, especially the mother, carefully concealed the shameful diagnosis at that time. Little Howard was told that his father was severely overworked or suffering from insomnia and paralysis. Even as an adult, Lovecraft claimed in letters that his father was paralyzed due to nervous exhaustion. Lovecraft's mother, Sarah Susan, became his main and almost the only link with reality. After her husband's hospitalization, she focused all her unspent love, anxiety, and oddities on her only son. Susie was a woman from a once wealthy and respected Providence family. She was distinguished by a painful pride in her origins and an extremely unstable psyche. Contemporaries described her as a strange woman, prone to sudden mood swings, from excessive tenderness to panic attacks. Susie was terrified for her son's health. She often wouldn't let him play with other children, considering them too rude or unworthy. Because of this, Howard grew up a lonely child whose only friends were the books in his grandfather's library. One of the strangest facts is that Susie often told little Howard that he was ugly and that his face looked repulsive, instilling in him the suggestion of an inferiority complex. She instilled in him the idea that Lovecrafts are the highest caste, gentlemen. This developed an arrogance in the boy, which later in life prevented him from adapting to reality and contributed to his infamous racist views. Over the years, Susie's condition worsened. She began to hallucinate. It seemed to her that strange creatures were climbing out of the walls, which is frighteningly in tune with her future stories. In 1919, her condition became critical, and she was admitted to the same Butler clinic where her husband had died. She wrote tender letters to her son from the hospital until her death in 1921, following an unsuccessful operation. Lovecraft was a sickly child. Since childhood, he was often ill, suffered from nervous disorders, insomnia, and was tormented by the horrors that constantly came to his mind. These dreams were filled with images of gigantic creatures, ancient forms, and inhuman proportions. He would later say that it was dreams that became the first source of his imagination. But another thing is important. His subconscious mind spoke earlier than his conscious mind. He grew up in a world where inner fear was more real than outer life. When his body and the rest of the world became repulsive to him, he immersed himself in the world of books, read ancient myths, and studied astronomy. By adolescence, signs of depression were added to this. Bouts of apathy, detachment, feeling disconnected from reality. He did not see the future as a path, but rather as the pressure of the unknown. Lovecraft's isolation was not a choice and was not a pose. He did not withdraw from the world. He did not initially feel that he belonged to it.
He hardly attended school, was unable to receive a systematic education, rarely left home, and spent most of his life alone, surrounded by books, letters, and his own thoughts. His contact with humanity was indirect, detached, almost theoretical. That is why loneliness has become for him not a state, but a way of thinking. In one of his letters, he confessed, "I don't feel like I'm part of the modern world. He seems strange and unpleasant to me." This phrase explains a lot. A sense of alienness became the foundation of his worldview. Lovecraft felt like an outsider among people, and this personal experience turned into a universal principle for him. His characters are almost always loners, scientists, archivists, antiquarians, people without family and roots. This is not a literary device, but a form of autobiography. He wrote it himself, "I've always felt like an outsider in human society." His main idea grew out of this feeling. Man is not the center of the world, but a casual observer, not the crown of creation or the goal of the plan, but a guest who has forgotten to explain why he is here. His gods and creatures are not evil or hostile, they are indifferent. And this is directly related to his life experience. Evil presupposes an attitude, and Lovecraft knew all too well the other feeling, lack of response. He wrote, "The universe doesn't know us and doesn't care about us." This is not an abstract philosophy, but the emotional conclusion of a man who has lived a life with almost no human warmth.
Isolation also affected his attitude towards knowledge. Lovecraft was well-read, but he did not believe that knowledge was liberating or comforting. On the contrary, he believed that knowledge destroys the last illusions that make life bearable. His most famous phrase is, "The most merciful thing in the world is the inability of the human mind to comprehend everything it knows." For him, the truth was not a light, but a threat. The more a person understands, the more clearly he sees his irrelevance in the universe. For a person living in isolation, this understanding does not open horizons, it closes them completely. He shares with Nietzsche the destruction of the idea of man as the center of being. But if Nietzsche saw this as a challenge and an opportunity to overcome, then Lovecraft saw only emptiness. He agrees with Camus in the diagnosis, "The world is indifferent, but not in the conclusion." Camus says that in the face of the absurd, one can rebel and live. Lovecraft responds with silence. The world is absurd, and that is why it is dangerous. Isolation did not make Lovecraft a philosopher in the usual sense. She made him a witness. He was not looking for meaning and did not argue with its absence. He was just recording what he saw, a universe in which man was not needed. And that's why his ideas are still disturbing. They grew not from theory, but from a life lived at a distance from people. The end of Lovecraft's life was quiet and almost imperceptible, as if he was disappearing the same way he had always lived, without recognition, without a sense of completion, without the certainty that his work mattered. He died not as a cursed genius or as a tragic hero, but as a man who remained on the sidelines of the world to the end. The last years of his life were spent in poverty and physical exhaustion. He was constantly experiencing financial difficulties, often malnourished, lived in cold rooms, and depended on rare royalties and the help of aunts. His health deteriorated gradually but inexorably. He suffered from chronic pain, exhaustion, depression, and digestive problems. Modern researchers believe that he died of intestinal cancer, aggravated by prolonged malnutrition and general weakening of the body. The important thing is that Lovecraft hardly complained. His letters of recent years are devoid of drama. He describes pain the same way he described the universe, dryly, distantly, as if he were observing himself from the sidelines. In one of the letters, he wrote, "My physical condition is deteriorating, but I try not to attach excessive importance to this." He even perceived his own body as something extraneous,
as a temporary mechanism that was failing. There is a particularly harsh phrase from his letters in which one feels tired of existence. "I have never been adapted to the struggle for life in this world."
He died in 1937, almost unknown to anyone, at the age of 46. His funeral was modest. His name didn't sound loud. His books were not perceived as something significant. He did not know that he would become the founder of an entire direction. He didn't know that his ideas would survive an era in which he felt like a stranger. And here comes the last, almost cruel irony. The man who wrote about an indifferent universe died as if the universe hadn't really noticed his departure. But it is precisely this invisibility that makes his figure particularly precise. He did not contradict his philosophy even in death. Lovecraft did not leave a will with great words. He didn't sum it up. He just disappeared, like one of his characters who learned too much and quietly went into the dark. And perhaps this is precisely his final dark honesty. He lived life the way he understood it, without consolation, without illusions, and without the hope that the world should be human. A rebel can sink into the abyss, and one who sinks into the abyss can rise again.